Sargent with the Alarm Museum. We're at the California Alarm Association's Winter Convention, December 2022 at the Fairmont Hotel.
And I'm Ralph W. Sevinor from the Historical Museum as well. John, thanks for making the introduction. And I'd like to turn it over to a good friend of mine, George DeMarco. Has a lot of experience in many facets of the industry. So, George, tell me a little about yourself.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for.
And let's start early.
Okay.
Let's go way back.
How early do you want to start?
Well, when you were a kid, what did you want to do when you were a kid? Did you think you didn't think, oh, I want to be in the alarm business, did you?
That never crossed my mind.
Okay.
But I did want to be a museum piece.
Ah, okay.
No, growing up, and I think a lot of folks at that time, because I grew up, late 60s, early 70s, and we were playing sports. We went outside early in the day, and then we'd come home when the lights came on the street. We were always playing sports. So I thought, my goodness, this is what I want to do. I want to do some sort of sport.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up in Los Angeles, California. I think everybody knows where the Greek Theater is. Griffith Park. How about that?
Well, I know where Dodger Stadium is.
How's that? I was pretty close there, but Griffith Observatory,
yes.
We lived right there, right at the entrance of the park. So great upbringing. We loved it there.
By the train park.
Yes, right by the train
Okay.
park. Horses.
Los Angeles live steamers.
Yeah. I first started, my earliest memory was Woodland Hills. We lived out there when it was all cow pasture for many, many years ago. And I went to St. Mel's grammar school there, went to church there. But as growing up, I loved to play sports. I went home, I left in the morning clean and came back all dirty because we were playing baseball, basketball, football, whatever it was. And then reality as a kid, right? You realize that there's always somebody just a little bit better than you, and I figured, well, I think I need to think about other things.
Were you good in sports?
I thought I was pretty good in sports. In the 8th grade, I was most valuable player in 3 different sports, which was pretty cool. And I was being recruited for a high school, which back then was kind of unusual. But I loved sports, as I said. But as I started getting older and whatnot, I grew up in an Italian family. We had 3 generations under one roof. Great experience. And a lot of our friends, relatives and whatnot, were all entrepreneurs for the most part. They had their own businesses, whether it was a tailor or real estate or anything in between. You have stores and whatnot. It was always intriguing to me. So I grew up around that. But early in my life, we were impacted by security, so to speak. And the reason why we were impacted by security is my family was dear friends of the LaBiancas, who were murdered.
Wow.
And they lived about 2 miles from where we were, so very close to my grandparents and whatnot. To this day, I remember our neighborhood changed overnight. Dogs, gates, burglar alarm systems.
That was 72 maybe?
60, the late 60s.
Late 60s.
Yeah, late 60s. And I remember my brother and I, who we shared the same room, we were petrified of what went down because they hadn't caught him yet and they didn't know what happened exactly. So it was kind of an alarm system, but we booby-trapped our room. We basically told our parents, do not come in the room at night because it's not going to end well for you. But it was such, back then, we had no thought of anything infiltrating into our house. We never even locked our doors. Nobody locked their doors back then. And all of a sudden, this terrible thing happened and it changed your psyche and it changed your life, it changed your lifestyle. So did that have a profound impact on me in the alarm system down the road? Maybe, but it was kind of in the back of my head. I was still young enough to say, do I really want to grow up to be an alarm guy? At that time, probably not. Would I rather be, a baseball player, an astronaut, a race car driver? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So as I, started going through school and whatnot, I realized that I just had an affinity towards something in business. And I really enjoyed the prospect of thinking about, what should I do? If I did open up a business, what should I do?
And how old were you in this period of time?
In this period of time, when I started really seriously thinking about it, I was 19, 20 years old, okay? And interestingly enough, I always came back to something that was recurring revenue based, okay? There's a lot of things that are recurring revenue based that we don't even think about. The tires on your car is kind of a form of recurring revenue. There's a lot of things out there that you have to buy over and over again and consume. So fast forwarding to when I was thinking about getting the business, I saw a little ad in this newspaper that said, enter the residential security industry, only 2% market penetration.
Sure.
And I went, that means there's 98% available market. I thought, man, I gotta look at that a little bit more closely. And what I did was, the ad was actually, it was promoting a product called AstroGuard. And it was being sold by Directed Electronics down in San Marcos, California. Who owned Directed Electronics at that time? Darrell Issa, the congressman, right? He owned that. So when I got involved with that particular company, he still owned, Darrell Issa still owned that Directed Electronics. So I kept putting it down. And I said, should I really do this? Should I really get involved with this? They pick up the phone, they called me, the director of sales, and he says, hey, we'd like to, and at this time, I was probably 22-ish at this time. And they said, hey, we'd like to get you involved. I says, well, I don't have the kind of money that you're expecting for me to put in that file this inventory. We're going to require you to write a check for $1,500 and you can take that. But before you do that, here's something to think about. Remember, only 2% of the market penetration. Okay, great. Let me think about it. About 3 weeks later, I get another call. Hey, we got a lead for you. Really? Okay, let me think about it. So I call up these two guys, and they said, yes, we'd like to buy these AstroGuard alarm systems under the condition that we're going to ship them out of the country. And I said, really? Okay. So they started ordering product from me. And right about that time, that's when ESPN started. I don't know if it about 81, 80.
So you did get the franchise, so that you came up with the $1,500?
I did. I scraped together $1,500 and
which is a lot of money back then.
Yeah, back then. I did. And so I called him up and I said, okay, how many do you want? And he says 10. Okay, we can do this. I called the company up, let's go. So this was my day. The order would come in from UPS to me at my apartment, one-bedroom apartment. They deliver it. I take the label off, and I put another label on, and they would come next day and they pick it up and ship it out.
Wow.
Yep, as I'm watching ESPN. And the orders kept getting larger.
And you're getting the money, right?
I had getting the money. That was one thing that I was very careful of, because that's what my mom and dad.
I was afraid it was going to end up.
Yeah, my mom and dad basically said, if you're going to do this, be very careful,
right,
because you want to make sure you have money. So I would require the money to be in my account before I shipped it out, by the way. So then all of a sudden the orders were getting larger, 50, 100 units. So they order 100 units. I'm going, okay, this is really good. I'm going to have to spend about 5 extra minutes putting labels on. But I told them, I said, I'm still not going to give you credit. So, you still have to pay it up front, because I was a young guy and I didn't know any better at that point.
Where was it being shipped to?
It was being shipped to Italy, believe it or not, right? Italy. And so I get this call at the last minute. It says, hold up the order. What do you mean hold up the order? I ordered it. You got to cancel it. And I said, why? Because Italy put a 90% excise tax on electronics because they like to keep everything manufactured in their own country. So I went, oh my goodness, okay, now what do I do? So that's when I started looking around, and I said, maybe I need to look at the alarm industry from a US-based perspective. And I came across a company, believe it or not, DeMarco. This was way back when. And there was a company called First Home Security, and they were in Century City, and I met these two brothers who were running it. And the same thing happened. They said, hey, come on in, let's meet with you, let's sit down. They had all the marketing material that you needed and everything to help you get out.
As a DeMarco franchise.
Exactly. And so they said, we need, X amount of money. And I went, $1,500 is one thing, but $10,000 is a little bit different. I'm still young, right?
Yeah.
And so that's when I went to my parents. I said, I think I got this. And I'd like to borrow $10,000. And they said, okay, let's hear more about it. And I told them I sold them on it. They lent me the $10,000. And I started practicing selling security systems to anybody who would listen. My wife, my family, my brother, anybody. Sit down, I'm going to practice. So if you remember back then, they used to use the case would open up, you had a little door, alarms would go off, and it would sound off and everything like that. So after I felt confident enough, I got a lead for he was the senior vice president of a savings and loan back then. And I went out to his house to go to a demonstration.
Now, how did he call you? Did he know you were in the business, or?
Yes, I got a lead from my father-in-law, okay, that says, hey, here's somebody.
See this guy.
Right, go see him. Okay. Did I know anything any better? No, I didn't. Anyway, when I went to the house, he sits there and he goes, okay, we're gonna watch a baseball game, because he was a die-hard baseball fan. 3 hours before he even got to the presentation, we're watching the baseball game. Okay, I guess this is what the industry's gonna be for me. So as soon as the game was over, he turned to me and he says, okay, let's do the presentation. So I was told back then, go to the kitchen table.
With the wife.
Right, with the wife, and she was there, Beth was there. And I'll tell you a little side note with Beth after this, but so we did the demonstration, and you had the wireless key, the linear wireless button. So I'm taking this, and I wanted to move the siren away from them so it wasn't blaring right at them. So as I moved it, knucklehead me, the wires in the back crossed on the transformer. Smoke comes flying out of the back of it.
Your first real presentation.
Right. Smoke comes flying out of the back of it. I look at Beth and I said, hit the panic button. She hits the panic button. It works.
Oh.
It works. And I said, see, even if they shut off your power, the system's quick. This guy's pen comes flying out of his pocket, right? Signs it over. That's when you can sell a security system way back when for a lot of money, right? And I said, holy cow. So the first 5 systems that 5 appointments I had, I sold 5 systems. The odds caught up to me a little bit later, by the way. But it was just a function of practicing, asking for referrals, everything that they taught me at this DeMarco. They said, just follow this sequence and you're going to be successful.
Did you go to the DeMarco, I think, at a school, didn't they? In Beltsville, Maryland or something?
No, it wasn't part of that. This was a kind of an independent group under the DeMarco label. Okay. So fast forwarding to tell a little side story, years later, after we took out that system, we put in a different system, a hardwired system, when we started becoming more proficient at the alarm industry. Beth was on, this is my first customer, was on the phone, and she was an insurance agent, and she got caught up with a phone call, forgot that the coffee pot was, or the teapot was on the stove. It was there so long, it melted. Alarm went off. To this day, she would say, you credited with saving our life and saving our house. We lost a little bit of the kitchen, but your system worked.
Isn't that great?
Oh my gosh, that's what gets you, right? That's what keeps you in this business. That's what you, not that you live for. You don't want anything bad to happen to anybody, but when something does happen, you want it to work, right? So as I'm going through my initial stages of my company, it was essentially me. And I was using at the time subcontractors and whatnot. I went to my brother, Jim DeMarco, and I looked at him and I said, how would you like to go in business? And he goes, sure. I go, Jim, you didn't even ask what business it is. He goes, no, you got to get me out of here. He was working for, I think at the time it was Fortune 100 company, and he was bored out of his mind. And that's when we formed our partnership, official partnership at that time. We went into business together.
And what was the name?
It was Great Air Alarm. And that was born out of the fact I used to work out at remember the YMCA's, right? And there was a lot of firemen there was a lot of athletes there. We used to work out, and all of a sudden this announcement came over that there was a Great Air Alarm fire down the street. And I said, I think that would be a great name. Wow. So that's how that was born. Yeah, that's how that was born. But we started the company, and our first, I think it was 4 employees, had no experience in the industry. And then one of our subcontractors, who was Richard Johnson, just amazing work, we hired him because we realized, I think we need somebody.
And these were mostly hardwired systems or wired systems?
So it was when my brother came in, and when we started doing this other work. Initially, it was a little bit of wireless, and then we realized at that time that we were getting these phantom signals in the middle of the night, and we switched over to more hardwired systems. So that's what we ended up doing. Focus. It was NAPCO. Initially was our first.
And at the time, you were charging good money for those jobs.
We were. Yeah. That was when it was profitable. Gross profit were great, right? You can afford to pay all your people. You didn't have to borrow any money, right?
Yeah.
But what was interesting is along the way, as we hired people, we tried to think differently about the security industry. One of the guys that we hired, Craig Pierce, he had no experience. How we got him was we went to college campus, and we were doing those career days. Yeah. So you had Gypsum, you had Intel, you had Great Air Alarm, Northrop, and we're like, okay, who are these guys? And we got some of our ads got answered from the college, and we heard Craig's voice, and it was a booming voice. It was super powerful. So that was our criteria. He was hired at that time, right? He comes to to us. We train him to be a salesperson and whatnot.
So you had an office at that point?
We did. We had an office in a 6-story building on the top floor, in one of those executive offices where you kind of rent like 200 square feet. And so Craig goes out to lunch to a hot dog stand, and as he's walking by a condo complex, he goes and asks the guy, hey, would you be interested in security systems? The guy said, absolutely, when can you have the bid? And it was hundreds of condos. And what was happening at that particular site was they were pulling out of bankruptcy. The bank needed foreclosure. The bank needed to sell those. So they wanted to throw an accessory, right, that would help them sell it. Sure. So on Friday, this is when we're given a bid, I call up people that I met in the industry, not through the association at this time, and I just said, hey, I need some help. We've never done this type of work before. This is what you need to do. So they were very courteous with their time, very open with their time.
And how close were they? Were they perceived as a competition, for example?
This one, we were down in Orange County at the time, and they were up in Los Angeles.
So not a perceived threat.
Yeah, it wasn't a perceived threat. So they gave us some sound advice on what to think and how to think through the process of why, because it was all wired, it wasn't wireless.
Mm-hmm.
And on Monday, we get notified that we won the contract.
Now,
Holy cow. Now what did we do?
what happened?
Right? Now what did we do? Now we had to figure out how to put them in. And because of that, we learned a lot about ourselves. One is we needed to learn a lot more. And number two is we learned a lot of our processes and how we installed systems from a quality assurance point of view that we kept throughout our history. Now, we got better, obviously, as we aged as a company and whatnot, but that taught us a lot of things to think about and consider at the pre-wire stage, when you put the equipment in, when you meet with the end user, the training process, everything. And of course, you want to get what? Recurring revenue, right? As a result of it. So that was really keen on that. One of the customers there, to this day, I still remember him. His name was Jim Bond. James Bond?
James Bond, right?
What did he do as a living? He was a Secret Service agent. So, yeah, I'll never forget that. It's amazing what the customers that we all have, some of the great stories. Another thing, too, is that we did get help from folks that were in the industry, but I'll tell you what we really got a lot of help from was our customer base. I remember doing a service call because I did service calls. I crawled up in attics. Wasn't as good at it as the people that we hired, that's for sure. But I learned a lot. I remember a gentleman, Mr. Lombardi, sat me down and said, I want to help you out here. You're not charging enough for your service calls. Right? And I'm okay. And he was a business guy. He was a friend of the family, by the way, too. And he says, here's what you need to think about. This is how you need to think about it. And you cannot be afraid to charge for your services. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Charge a fair price, but don't undercut yourself at that point. So you know he does, he goes, you see how much is a service call? I think it was like $35 thing. He gives me $70, number one, a bottle of Dom Perignon, and he says, did you learn anything? Yes, I did.
Wow.
And that's when we went back to the company and we started thinking about how should we really charge for our services? Here's a customer that cares enough about us that they want us to stay in business because they think we're doing a halfway decent job. So that was very encouraging to see that happen at that point in time. And it wasn't the only time that's happened. I mean, customers, if you really listen to them, they tell you what you do really well.
Yeah.
And they tell you where you need to improve.
And sometimes we don't listen. They tell us, but we don't listen.
Because we get arrogant a little bit, right? And we think
We know
good.
it all.
Right, we think we know it all, and right? Yeah, so I can definitely attest to that. So as we started building our company up, we went from, $100,000 to $1.1 million to $5 million very quickly. And
again, time frame?
that was probably a 5-year time frame. And
Mid-80s?
yes.
Okay.
And
how are you communicating? Were you using tape telephone dialers? Were you?
yeah, good question. We were digital dialers at that point in time. So we were using DeMarco.
And did you do your own monitoring, or did you use a third-party monitoring facility?
We used a third-party monitoring facility. We always use a third-party monitoring facility. I didn't want to have anything to do with a third-party monitoring service. I wanted us to do what we do best, and we want others to do what they do best at that point in time. That's what we believe, and that's how we did it. One of our minor keys to our success was the ability to attract amazing people over the years. We were very lucky, and I was always recruiting on almost a 24/7 basis.
Mm-hmm.
So if I met you and, oh man, you gave great customer service, or you had something special about yourself, I would just say, hey, think about a career in the alarm industry. Not many people wake up, say, I'm going to jump in the alarm industry. In fact, we used to do employee orientation. And that's the question I asked. How many of you, when you were growing up, came into the alarm industry on purpose? I don't think we've ever had one person raise their hand. It's not top of mind. Doctors, lawyers, baseball players, things like that, right? Astronauts, race car drivers. But we had a pretty good ability to attract some great people. When you have those great people and you take care of them.
How did you attract them?
I think the attractions a lot of times came in from our existing existing employees, because a lot of times you get some really good referrals from your existing employee base.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is that when they refer somebody, they want to refer somebody who's good, because they don't want somebody next to them that's going to drag them down.
Sure.
Right. So. And through and through all your history, you have ebbs and flows of morale that goes up and down. Sometimes you get so busy you forget that it's all about the customer, but a lot of times it should be all about the employee. I was a very firm believer in you got to take care of the customer and the employee and the company. So it's like a three-legged stool. And if any one of those legs breaks, snaps, you got a little bit of a problem.
Yeah. So
were we perfect at all that? No. And a lot of times who really pushed us were our own employees that said, your processes are terrible. What do you mean process? Or your quality assurance, we really need some work here.
Mm-hmm.
So we had folks that were very influential that were young. We had one gentleman who was 18 years old, just went to college, and he says, I'd like to help you with your quality assurance. That's what I'm going to college for.
Oh, be darned.
Right? We had another gentleman who was going through college, and he was all about processes. Because what we learned a lot of times when you take a piece of paper and it travels through the company, and it zigzags back and forth, the cost of paper is nothing. It's all labor that it takes to go back and forth, and if you keep going backwards and forwards and backwards again, it gets very expensive and mistakes are made. So our goal was to take that piece of paper, that process, and have it travel as linear as possible. So when it started here and it got to the end, everything was done well, and it was done right, and it was done timely at the point. Because what business are we in?
Customer service business.
Customer service. But even more importantly is life safety.
Life safety.
And if we make a mistake,
Protection of property.
somebody could lose something to fire, a burglary, or something like that. So we have to be champions of making sure we're doing as much correct the first time, because sometimes we don't have that luxury. Because we would feel bad. If anything happened badly to somebody, we would take it. A lot of times, you take it personally.
And we do, by the way.
Right? I mean, you've been in the business you guys both have been in the business for years and years, and you know that losses do happen, but we don't want the losses to happen because we made a mistake that was avoidable. Unavoidable ones are different, but avoidable ones, right? So we taught that philosophy through the whole company, almost from the very beginning. As a result of, we kind of had a little bit fast growth. Our accounting firm, outside accounting firm. So it's those people on the outside that really push you and help you. It says, hey, you guys should be involved with the Inc. 500. So what we did was he helped us submit an application for Inc. 500 fastest growing companies. We went, okay, we'll do this. And sure enough, it was 87, 88, and 89. We were listed in the magazine 3 years in a row.
Fantastic.
And it really was, Ralph, because we learned a lot about ourselves as a company. We learned a lot about ourselves through the industry. But when you start seeing things through many different industries, it becomes a real big eye-opener. So one of the conferences, because we went these Inc. 500 conferences, annual events every year, which was just amazing, very dynamic. I remember sitting down with a gentleman for 15 minutes. It was a bus ride. We were doing a golf tournament. It was a 15-minute ride, golf tournament. And he sat and he says, tell me your story. And I did. And he says, so I said, what's your story? He goes, yeah, I'm on my 6th business. What? Really? He says, yeah. And he says, I've experienced every phase of business, owning a business, selling business, and everything in between. He says, make sure you go back and you think about the statement I'm going to tell you, but you should run your business like you're going to sell it tomorrow. Regardless of whether you sell in 10 years, 20 years, whatever down the road, you need to run your business like you're going to sell it tomorrow. I came back, I met with my brother, and we said, hey, I think that was 1994, if I'm not mistaken. Could have a couple of years off there. But it really was a profound effect on me and my brother. We said, hey, we need to look at it through this different lens. And that's, I think, where we were successful is we weren't afraid to look at a different lens than ours, because we get myopic every once in a while. And it was very profound. And that's when we started looking at everything to make sure that we were doing everything as much right as we could from a business perspective. So that was pretty exciting from that standpoint. Yeah. And I'm going to go back on one thing. And probably want to make this clear too. When we first started, we were doing existing homes. And then when we got that new construction condo project, Mill Creek, I was trying to remember the name, I got it. We started making our name for ourselves in new construction homes. And we were getting awarded, and back then in the 80s in Orange County, they were actually grading mountains, building thousands of homes. And we were getting a pretty good share of these homes doing the work.
Did you go in and pre-wire and then come back later to finish those kind of things?
Yes, yes.
So you really got your mark on the property and then...
Yep,
yeah,
we did. And a lot of people back then, they were doing pre-wires for free. We got sucked up into that a little bit because builders were, kind of expecting that. And then we realized that's a race to the bottom.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't do us any good. The guy, Lombardi, didn't make money. So that didn't resonate with me. However, what we also noticed too, when we started getting all these different construction sites, we noticed that all of a sudden now you're getting 15 bids from all these different companies. Because there's all these alarm companies are out there. So now we're saying, what's making us different? Mm-hmm. How are we different than everybody else? Because we're all offering a security system. So that's when we started thinking about, okay, what other services can we offer? So in the residential new construction, that's how we got into doing whole house electronics, surround sound systems. We even did central vacuum systems. So we wanted a greater share of the wallet, but we also wanted to differentiate ourselves compared to everybody else.
Company. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So when we were doing these condos and homes, single family homes and whatnot, we started doing work for business owners too, because we're doing these very large houses, and all of a sudden these business owners go,
I own factory.
Right, exactly. And that's how we got into commercial. We learned how to do commercial at that point in time. But the really interesting story is when we got into fire. I'm on a condo complex in Huntington Beach again, and I'm there, and the contractors say, hey, you guys are going to be wrapping up pretty soon. Yeah, we got this all worked out. Everything's great. Fire inspector walks on the job. Where's your fire system?
And about what time is this? What year?
This is...
Because fire codes were...
Yeah, mid-80s.
Right.
And the fire inspector says, where's your fire system? And the guy says, what do you mean fire system? Well, you can't open up. My ears are perking up. You can't open up the site until you get a fire system. And I'm thinking to myself, fire, it's required, mandatory. Our system, security system, is not mandatory. All of a sudden went, mandatory.
Nice.
Contractor turns to me and says, can you do fire systems? What do we do as young men?
Yes.
We say no problem. That was on a Friday. Monday morning, I call up Huntington Beach Fire Department. Call up, I need to talk to an inspector. Gentleman answers, his name is Bill Sampson. He says, I said, hey, I'd like to do a job walk with you over at so-and-so site, because I'd like to walk, because we want to make sure we're doing it right. The fire inspector says, I have a confession to make. What? And he goes, he says, this is my first day on the job. I said, guess what?
Mine too.
It's mine too.
Oh, man.
We became very good friends. We actually even helped eventually. What we did was we even had classes at our site for the fire inspectors to teach them how fire systems, this is down the road, okay? But eventually what we did is we brought them in to teach them how systems should be properly installed. Well, as we're going through this experience with Bill, we would do fire jobs, and then I'd be talking about it. He said, how's your kids doing and everything? And we walk through the whole project. And, okay, sign off. And I go, Bill, we can't do that. And he goes, what? I said, you didn't even test one thing. We're going to walk through again, and we're going to test it. Okay, George, yeah, you're right. But they trusted us that we were doing the right job, but it still's not right. I still want to make sure we went through the process. That's how we got in the fire. And then from that, we started doing water flow systems in those commercial buildings, which was highly profitable. We were doing service agreements, or what leases back then, but we called them service agreements, and so on and so forth. So we got very interested in doing fire because it was pre-sold by the state of California, and also had other things involved with it, maintenance contracts, inspections. You guys know, right? This is all stuff that's driven by the state that you're doing business in, and we thought it was
mandated.
Yeah, it's mandated. It's highly profitable, work, and people typically stay with you. In fact, what we did learn through the years as recessions happen, you may lose a security system because the tenant is gone, they went out of business, but somebody has to pay for the fire system.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter who it is, but somebody has to pay for the fire systems. That still is attractive, to this day. So if we're very fortunate that way. So when we step back again, we're doing those residential systems. We started doing fire. And then we had a little company that we talked to. We started doing home automation systems in 1988, 89.
Boy, that was really difficult back then. No standards, nothing interconnected.
We were doing, it was called Unity, for those folks that know that system, Unity green screen. And we actually were paid to learn. We had electrical company, Southern California Electric, if I got that right, but they were giving us POs to install these systems on job sites because they were very interested in these home automation systems, which would help to manage, electricity in the home. The one site that we did was a site that was for, it was like a retirement community. And I said to them, why are you doing this? Back then, VCRs were blinking. There's no way this is going to work, and it failed miserably. But we got paid to install various home automation systems, so we learned a lot through that. And obviously, if you fast forward to today, all the way to today, the systems that we're installing today are so much easier.
It was the Wild West back then.
It was. And now, we all in this room can install a Sonos system, right? From background music or music throughout the house. There's a lot of things we can do ourselves. But back then it was a lot more difficult. But that was one of the things that I think that made us different than a lot of companies, is that we were willing to try something new. To try something that was different than anybody else. And we had customers, and some significant customers, who, even though we're living on a little bit of the bleeding edge, they were going along with us. And they knew that we would fail sometimes, but we would fail forward. But they stayed with us as we were either developing a process of technology or a service. And sometimes it was definitely painful. But we were doing remote video monitoring in 1998, 99 timeframe when it was really difficult.
What was the product? Do you remember?
It was a conglomerate of different processes that we brought together. And we did have, because nobody did it back then, we had a 24/7 monitoring center that was just dealing with video.
George, question. Did you dip your toe at all into acquisitions, or was it totally organic?
No, we did a few acquisitions over the year, nothing major, but I did do, in fact, I'm still friends with him today. My first acquisition was a 9-time multiple.
9 times.
9 times. And the reason why is because he had an IRS judgment against him, and he called me up and said, George, I'm through. Write the check, send it to them.
No lien though, right? No IRS lien?
No IRS lien. Yeah, we got through that.
Okay.
But that's how we got he had celebrities, and that's how we started doing work for celebrities. And that was a whole nother world for us, especially for still a relatively young company. But over the years, we would have folks that would come to us and say, hey, we'd like to sell our company, to you. But sometimes it was a function of getting accounts, or it was a function like home automation. Mm-hmm. We bought a company to get into the home automation. Mm-hmm. Helped us get into a market.
Yeah.
So sometimes we would do that. We bought another company later on in our years. That's how we got into remote video monitoring and doing these extensive systems. In fact, we did systems that were installed in Canada and in Singapore, most of the major companies, and we used international contractors, and we never set foot on the property. And it was all done. Remember that guy, going back to the guy that was process driven? We had processes that were in place that we thought of everything except, by the way, we thought of everything, how to manage it, except the exchange of money. So you had to be careful with exchange of money. So that first one we did, we went, whoops, what happened there?
Yeah.
Because when it changes on you, it changes back.
Uh-huh.
Right? So these are all things that you don't sometimes think about. But when it hits you, you go, okay, I got this down now. Yeah. Next time, we'll learn.
Yeah.
How was competition in the LA area at the time?
Competition, Orange County,
But
LA, San
you
Diego.
were mainly focused Orange County, but I guess you still reached out a little.
Yeah, we did. Competition, that's a great comment, Ralph. I remember talking to a gentleman up in the Gold Coast, up in Central California, and he was, because I was talking to him at that time about potentially acquiring his company, but he was appalled at the number of competition that we had in my area. What do you mean you have 150 companies that did work in Irvine, California? He goes, the majority of mine are eight. And usually what happens is when they grow up, they sell to me, and then become 7 or 6.
Uh-huh.
Couldn't believe it. But we were so used to dealing with competition at that time frame. It didn't really mean anything to us. We just knew that we were always striving to say, pick me, right?
Be better. How do I
be better? Pick us as a company, and that it's not easy to do. But I think healthy competition, is good because it does make you better. When you think about it, right? You have to offer. It drives it. It forces you to be better. And a lot of times, our pricing structure was a bit higher than everybody else because we're telling everybody, hey, we're worth it. But we had a slogan back then. It was when you expect and deserve the best. That was our slogan for our customers. And a lot of them appreciate it. Did we hit that mark? Not always. But what we try to do is we try to listen to the customers to make ourselves better. One of the things that I was really focused on is, you ever send in not just a survey, but sometimes you do a complaint to either airline or some company, say, hey, this is not a great experience. And then you never hear from them. To me, that is the worst thing in the world. And that's when I said, within our company, Anybody that wants to complain, we want to hear them because it's going to make us better. And all the complaints would bubble up so I can see it, because it's going to tell you, is it people, is it a process, maybe it's just the equipment when it comes down to. Sometimes we would use hash marks. How many problems have we had with that particular keypad? We need to talk to the manufacturer and say, hey, we're having an issue here, right? It's things like that that we kind of really focused on. We also, on our, going back to the company that we acquired that got us into video monitoring, we also were doing work and tracking 18-wheelers. Man, it was crazy. Where they would leave a particular site and they would go from point A to point B. And we would have to track them along the way. And if they deviated from a route, we'd have to call the police. So we were doing things like that, right?
Yeah.
We're doing things like that. Here's another one that'll throw you off a little bit. LAPD. They were having an issue way back when, trying to get video images, either from the squad car up to the police or the helicopter, or vice versa, because you had all those buildings in there.
Mm-hmm.
We brought them technology, and I learned something on this one, that we were saying was, we can help them in this situation. We have a solution where we can get the images beamed up, right? So here I am in the middle of Los Angeles at the LA heliport, watching the squad cars going through the city, helicopters above, and we're doing this technology. And I'm going, how the heck did I get involved with this one? What did I learn? Technology is great, very interesting. One is you have to have deep pockets to make sure you can see it all the way through. But number two, the more important thing is you have to ask them what the budget is. And you find out a lot of times, you go, George, great technology, this is what we got, and it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So we learned that. Sometimes it's great to offer those things, but there's a few of the steps that you need to look at. So we were never afraid to look at technology and how do we take that technology and apply it to solutions that can help our customers manage their lives better, keep them more secure, actually have their back when you think about it. Because they really don't want to think about you. They don't wake up thinking about you every day.
No.
Right?
No.
They don't want to. They want to think that you have their back and you know, they don't have to worry whether it's fire, intrusion, or whatever.
Very forward thinking.
Yeah. So then you got to a point where you and Jim decided to sell.
Yes. So, well,
What year was that?
2003.
Oh, that long ago. Wow.
I know. Was it
Almost 20 years?
Yeah, it's a different lifetime at that point. So yeah, we were doing work in many different areas because we had our customers driving us to other areas.
Yeah.
And that's when we thought, well, maybe if we do more of a national footprint, we can grow along with other folks. So we, unsolicited, we worked with a company that said, hey, we'd like to take you that way. So we were a C Corp. You know what that means?
Oh.
We were a C Corp at that point. We were not interested in selling if you just wanted, you know, the asset. Somebody wanted the whole company, it's a whole different thing. And sure enough, that was probably not the main reason, but that was a reason why we stepped forward into it, because somebody was willing to buy the whole company.
Why did you go to a C Corp?
Early on, our accountant said, hey, depending on what you want to do, I remember what he said way back when. He said, there's ebbs and flows in the taxes, and things change. But if you definitely want to have more shareholders eventually, if you definitely want to grow that, you should consider, you know, C Corp. We would eventually, if we stayed in business, we would have probably switched over. Yeah, we probably flipped over at that point. But then, so when we did decide to pull the trigger, that's when, you know, life changes. Life changes because now it's a different experience at that point in time. And then going back pre-sale or thought of sale, we we just had, we had, we call it 5 branches. We had Sacramento, San Jose.
You were as far as Sacramento.
Yep.
Incredible.
Inland Empire, San Diego, and
These are branches you had.
branches.
Wow.
And then in Irvine, we actually had a branch and a half, because that half branch was where we had the monitoring center. But that's where that that's where the integrated systems group a lot of times worked out. So we had a residential division, we had a commercial division, we had an integrated systems division, we had a fire division. So that's how we had these verticals, because as you well know, fire is much different than commercial a lot of times.
Sure.
But integrated systems is when we were doing very large access control systems. That we actually had programmers that were on staff. Back then, integration meant that you were coding to make things work.
Yeah. Sure.
Now, the good news is that they work well together, or better together. And it's not that it's easier, but it is a bit easier to get things.
How many people did you have at that time?
It was in the neighborhood about 150 people.
Amazing.
And it was 150 people, plus we had subcontractors. Because we had a lot of different construction sites that were going on at the same time. I remember in Huntington Beach, what we did from a marketing point of view, you would drive up and down Huntington Beach, that's when they started building everything. But we got the 4x8 plywood, and we had signs made. Another project protected by greater warrant.
Oh.
And we would put them up all around the 4 corners of the project.
And they loved it because it was security for them.
They would love it. So all of a sudden I'm driving down one day, I'm looking around going, okay, this is cool.
Right.
Because there was a lot of them that were done that way. Because that's great advertising, and people are going, yeah, well, that one's being done. Maybe we should, consider them. So we're always thinking about that.
Mm-hmm.
But we also thought about what can we do as a company to give back. And so one of my friends, if you guys remember MCI, right?
Mm-hmm.
The telephone company.
Yep. Yeah. And they were going to sponsor a golf tournament. And one of my friends came to me and says, hey, MCI backed out of this golf tournament. I said, what is it for? And he said, this Kids Cancer Connection. Tell me about this. So it was about 35 days before it went off, right? And we said, what if we step in? I don't know if you can do it because it's 35 days. And we said, yeah, let's try this. So we made an effort. We went before our employees. 35 days later, we put on a golf tournament. 148 golfers showed up, and that's when we started this charity golf tournament, Greater Warren, and the focus was a children's charity.
Fantastic.
Children's charity. And then as a result of that, I became president of Kids Cancer Connection. And Kids Cancer Connection wasn't about curing cancer. It was about the relationship between doctors and nurses and caregivers and parents of what people are going to go through. Gave them an open forum. Heartbreaking, obviously. Not all the kids survived. But it was well worthwhile to see us be able to fund some of the activities that they were doing.
Yeah.
So as a result of that, we kept giving back to children's charities, and then from there we went and we asked the employees, we have our charity, what are some of the ones that you would like to? So one year we gave 3 different charities based on some of the inputs we got back from our employees and whatnot. So it was pretty cool to do that. So it's definitely about protection. It's definitely about, taking care of the company, employees, and the customers and whatnot. But giving back to the community is a function of everything we do. And we do this typically.
Yeah.
So.
But back to your sales, so were you happy about selling? Because, you continue to be involved in the industry in other ways, but You know, and you had a fantastic office. I remember going to see it. You had lots of sports stuff in it.
I did. I still have a lot of that stuff. Yeah, it's just, my wife goes, we are now cramming everything into your little office at home.
Very, very modern. Very modern.
Yeah. I still have a lot of that. Memorabilia, which is pretty cool. Now my kids are saying, Dad, I'd like to have dibs on this one, that one. Okay, we'll get through that. Yeah, no, we made the decision to move forward, and when you make that decision to move forward, there's consequences, both good and bad, that happen from the sale. And we made a conscious effort to make the best of it at that point in time.
So now, looking forward, what interests you now? Where are you going?
It's a great question. So remember George Gunny, right?
Of course.
He comes to me and he says, hey, how would you like to help us with a little organization called ESX, Electronic Security Expo? We only need you for a couple, 3 years. What was that, 2008, Rob? Somewhere around there?
Yeah.
So still
We worked together on that.
We did. So I'm still involved with it. It's been a passion of mine, and some of the passion is a result of, remember Inc. 500, how amazing the experience was there. Trying to do the same thing with ESX.
And it's exciting to see the growth of it.
Yes.
It really has become a major player.
Yes, yeah. And that was the vision of both John and George. And I really appreciate that opportunity to help them along, because I had both sides, left brain, right brain going on, because we dealt with the security portion of it, but we also dealt with the home automation, and smart home stuff. So as a result of being involved with that, in 2011, I partnered up with a friend of mine who wanted to get the business together to become consultants. And I thought it'd be great. This gentleman he worked for Fred Smith. He was in the board of directors for Fred Smith of FedEx, right? And he's had some great experience. At the age of 27, he was in charge of HR for Pillsbury, so he's had great corporate experience. So between the two of us, I could deal with little companies and we deal with big ones, right? And we worked together for a few years, and we found out something about each other. One is he likes working with huge companies, and he didn't understand us, right? He didn't understand the entrepreneurs much.
The Goldilocks effect.
Exactly. To this day, we're still amazing friends, and but we just said, hey, you do your thing, I'm going to do my thing. So that's when, in about 2015 or 16, I think, right about that time, we split, and then my wife became my partner at that point. But I now consult for companies within the industry, even from a manufacturing technology or monitoring center, alarm company, inside the industry as well as outside the industry, and it's pretty fulfilling. I really enjoy it.
And it shows.
Yeah, thank you.
Shows.
I really enjoy it with getting to know people and seeing how earnest they are trying. A lot of these folks want to make their companies better, and to be able to participate in that is great. So I helped Larry Folsom with his company, and that was really, really amazing. And before that, there was a company called Critique It. They had an educational software program that helps students and professors communicate with each other, and they did it in a way that federally protected and whatnot. You had to have all these rules and regulations, but you could do it in the written form, the audio form, or the video form. And this gentleman figured it all out. Well, he had a lot of shareholders, and it was not going as well as it should be, and got it organized, and we ended up going from I'm ready to give up to we sold it to a publicly traded company.
Right.
And I'm taking a little credit for it, but this gentleman, once we got him on the right path, he did it. You just need a little kickstart.
Lemons to lemonade story.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I not only like doing, but I like seeing people behind the scenes become not just successful, but become satisfied in what they're doing. And they become a little better because there's people that kicked me in the butt, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I became better of that experience because of that experience. Nobody was harsh with me. It was just the words that they use. And I was like,
You
I
ever
never
think
thought
of
of
it?
it that
Yeah.
way, right? I've never thought of it that way. And one of my best life coaches, my wife Julie, she would, I understand what you're saying, but here's a different perspective. Right?
Yeah.
And she would always ask a question. I'm going, oh my God, really? But it hit me right between the eyes, and it was good for me. It's good for all of us to be, not to be arrogant or not to think we know it all, but we can all learn. And one of my big things is that I get to learn from a lot of great business people. So I'm on still that lifelong journey of learning. So anytime I get a chance to meet somebody who's been in an amazing business or not so amazing business, that's okay. So I really enjoy that.
Yeah. Well, George, we've pretty much reached our time.
This is great.
You and I have been friends a long, long time with a lot of, association work
Yes.
that we've accomplished. And I'm proud of your 4 kids too, because they're great kids. But is there anything in closing that you'd like to add?
Sure. And you brought up about associations. I think a lot of people out there think that somebody else is going to take care of where our industry's going. The good news is that there's people out there that are willing to step in. Just like you two, there's other folks that have taken the reins of organizations or contributed in the background that has been the betterment of this industry. And I think a lot of people across the country may forget that. Because without that, we may not have the industry that we have today as much. But more importantly, what I look at more than anything else is the lifelong friendships you develop. The times that you can pick up the phone call,
Exactly.
the phone and call somebody.
Absolutely.
Whether it's for personal reasons, business reasons, or anything in between, it's amazing.
And those are intangible, hard to measure, but just unbelievable in opportunity of expertise.
Right, and also you get a chance, and you get to learn that everybody has not issues, but we have trials and tribulations that go through during our lifetime, and then we have the happy moments when you become a grandfather. Then again, you have others when a mom or dad dies, and then people know that. And I'm so sorry that because of your loss and whatnot. But it's great to have those people around you, especially when you're in your time of need.
So, George, just in closing, if you were to do it all over again, or you were to talk to someone that was 20 years old, getting to 19 years old in your case,
Yeah.
what would you tell them? What are the secrets?
Yes, one of the major secrets is listen. For me, is listen to others that have been there. Seek wisdom whenever and wherever you can. Also, find the best employees that you can. It might cost you a little bit more money in the beginning, but it's well worth it. Because if you don't have the right employees in the right seats on that bus, it doesn't always obviously end well. And one of the other thing too is make sure you take care of your employees. We talk about attrition all the time, customer attrition. Watch your employee attrition, because there's a direct relationship between employee attrition and customer attrition.
Great words of wisdom.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, George,
Yep.
thank you very much.
You are welcome.